Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Random Vlogging. This is a show that I haven't done in a very long time because of a lot of things. But today, I am upset. I am in a fair amount of pain. I haven't slept well in months, and I am listening to lies and misinformation just absolutely spread across the web and the world in incredible numbers, and they're all asking for one incredibly stupid thing, which is to boycott Amazon Prime Day. Dun, dun, dun! Yes, it is the dreaded boycotts. And it's a boycott of Amazon Prime Day. How is Amazon, the multi-billion-dollar company, ever going to recover? I have very strong feelings about boycotts, and I've wanted to make this video for a while now because I sincerely despise every single time I hear about hashtag boycott something. Because for, I think, almost every single one I have seen in the past decade, they're not boycotts. They have no idea what an actual boycott is. They have no idea, the people organizing them and participating in them have no idea how to effectively boycott something and how a boycott will actually affect change in an economic marketplace. Economics is something I've studied for my degree. I did incredibly well. I scored better on my economics finals than quite a few of my professors. I love economics. A boycott is an incredibly useful tool in a capitalism economy. It is remarkably effective when it's done when it's done correctly, and can influence massive amounts of change in ways that other things can't. Like signing petitions are worthless. Petitions literally do nothing except show that a lot of people are willing to sign either a piece of paper or a web page. And that's it. It doesn't even show that they actually believe what it is that they're signing. And a lot of people realize this because these petitions and things like that can get spread, and a lot of false information is used to get signatures and things like that. And so petitions are just about worthless, except in a few very, very rare circumstances. And they require a hell of a lot more work in vetting the signatures and everything than a website will allow. Like it's a remarkably difficult thing to actually make a petition that does anything other than wastes people's time. Boycotts, on the other hand, massively useful. However, a boycott has to have a number of things in it in order for it to actually work. So let me start off with what a boycott isn't. Boycott Amazon Prime Day is not a boycott. A boycott is not don't buy products from a company on one day. Because we saw this years ago. There was this thing where they were trying to get people across the country in an effort to lower gas prices. They were trying to get people across the country to just not buy gas on a certain day, and they're like, that'll hurt their businesses. They'll lose all this money, and that will make them. No, it wouldn't, for a number of reasons. First things first, businesses don't measure daily sales in the way you think they do. Do they keep track of daily sales? Yes, and they compare them to last year's daily sales on the same. Not only will they compare them to last year's daily sales on the same day of like the month, they will also compare them to last year's daily sales on the same day of the week in that quarter, because Mondays are not going to be as busy as Fridays and things like that. So they actually compare them across a lot of different things. And they'll compare them to the same sales the quarter previously and things like that. So they do measure daily sales. However, daily sales don't really mean that much. They don't. They are simply a very small snapshot that you can use to help plan out the rest of your week. Your daily sales figures will only affect maybe 1 or 2 days of predictions. They won't show up on your P&L, your profit and loss report. They won't show up. They really won't be talked about beyond just a very small sales meeting. A regular sales meeting that you would have like every week, where you go, hey, Monday sales were down. It's the only time anyone ever cares about daily sales. What companies actually measure are quarterly and yearly sales. Quarterly sales are important because shareholders and things like that are generally paid quarterly. And a lot of companies, due to regulations in the U.S., are required to release quarterly sales reports and things like that. So quarterly reports matter. Quarterly reports happen 4 times a year. That's why they're called quarterly. So they last about 3 months. But having a single bad quarter doesn't actually do something. Quarterly reports will affect stock prices, not by a massive amount. In general, the thing that quarterly reports will affect the most is speculative stock purchases and things like that, because they'll see a bad quarterly report and people may start selling. Some of the speculative ones may start selling a little bit of their stocks to buy something else that's having a better quarter, thinking that this one bad report is an indication that more are coming, or it may be used by people to see a bad quarter, watch stock prices drop a little bit. They know the company is strong, so they'll buy then so that they can make a little bit of money. But it's generally just short-term stocks that are affected by it. Anyone that's investing in the market long-term, quarterly reports really don't mean that much. Yearly reports, very important. Yearly reports are one of the major driving forces of the stock market. They're one of the major driving forces of profitability in businesses. They're going to affect what kind of loans and things like that businesses it can get. They're going to affect budgets. They're going to affect pay. Everyone from the CEO all the way down to the minimum wage workers are all going to be affected by the yearly financials. So speaking about that, a one-day boycott of anything is a waste of time. That's not actually how a boycott works. It's not how it's ever worked. All you are doing is wasting your time. Literally. There's no reason for a one-day boycott. I'll go back to the gas one. For this one-day boycott, it did actually get some steam. There were quite a few people like, hey, I'm doing this. I'm going to stick it to the gas companies. And so what they did was there was quite a few places where gas sales were down for a day. And then the next day, gas sales were up because people need gas. They're still heavily reliant, our entire country is still heavily reliant on gasoline. Most people do not live within walking distance of their place of employment or biking distance or anything like that. Our public transportation system, with a few rare exceptions, sucks in this country. Unless you live in a really big city, public transportation is not going to help you get to work. So we're reliant on gas. So boycotting a gas station for a single day is a massive waste of time, because all it does is shift their profits one day forward. So by the time you're looking even at just the weekly sales numbers, it's all evened out. And by the time you get to quarterly, which is what somewhat counts, it's not even a blip on the radar. And when you get to the yearly financial summaries, the things that companies actually care about, that actually can end a company if their yearly sales fall really, really short, you would never be able to tell the boycott even happened. And the other thing about the boycott was that it was only on gasoline. One service, albeit the largest service that they offer. But it was on one service of many. So people could still go in and buy food. You could still go in and buy scratchers or cigarettes or any of the myriad of things you can buy in a gas station. They could still get air in their tires. They could still go through the car wash. They just weren't buying gasoline. And that's a completely pointless thing. It literally does absolutely nothing, because any money that might have been lost from this boycott was immediately made up within days. It did not affect anyone, except for the activists that are like, yes, we did a good job. We stuck it to the man. No, it's not how a boycott works. This Amazon Prime Day is another really great example of what a boycott isn't. Everyone that is talking about boycotting Amazon Prime Day is forgetting something pretty major. They probably weren't going to buy anything on Amazon Prime Day anyway. To be blunt, tons of people have talked about this. Amazon Prime Day deals suck. They've never been good at all. Like, they're horrible. They're on stuff that nobody wants to buy. This is literally Amazon's garage sale, is what it is. So this boycott Amazon Prime Day is a bunch of people that weren't going to buy things anyway, which again doesn't actually change anything. And again, this is a one-day event. Amazon doesn't care about single-day sales. Nobody does. So if you're boycotting Amazon for one day, you're doing nothing. It is a massive, massive waste of time and energy. Now, I have seen a few Twitch streamers that are saying, well, we're not going to stream on Amazon Prime Day because Amazon owns Twitch. So that's how we're going to get them, is we're going to hit them by not streaming. No. The only people that are going to be hurt from that are the streamers themselves. Literally. Amazon makes their money on Twitch through subscriptions, which are monthly, not daily, through bits purchases, which you generally have to do before you donate them. So people are still going to have the same number of bits to donate them to you, whether they have them on, whether they donate them on Monday or on Tuesday. Amazon has already made their money. And then they do make some money from advertisements. That is the only way you are quote-unquote hurting them, is one day they're going to make slightly less money on advertisements. However, streamers make a lot more money. They make bit donations, but they also get PayPal donations and things through like Streamlabs and stuff like that Amazon doesn't get a piece of. And because that's part of their job, they're going to have to make up that lost income some other day. So just like the gas boycott, what's going to happen is you're going to lose money on one day and then do extra work on another day so that you can gain that money back because you need it to hit your own budget. So it's a massive waste of time. So what is a real boycott? This is how a real boycott works. First of all, it is not a one-day thing. An actual real boycott must last long enough to show up on at least a quarterly report. They're most effective when they show up on a year-end report, which will have each one of the quarters listed on it. So in order for that to happen, you're talking minimum, since a quarter is going to be roughly 12 weeks, you're going to need a minimum of 2 to 4 weeks of this boycott lasting. That is the absolute bare minimum for a boycott to last, for it to actually do something. Now, there are some rare instances where once a boycott goes on for like a week, the company may bow to the pressure a little bit just to ensure that the boycott doesn't show up on their quarterlies. But it's incredibly rare, because any company that really could be affected by a boycott is going to be offering a service that is needed enough that boycotting actually hurts the people that are doing the boycotting. That's the second part of a real boycott, is a real boycott actually hurts you in some way. That's why it's such a big deal, is that you're willing to do something that hurts yourself in order to, kind of stick it to the man. And generally that means having to go without certain things, having to pay more for certain things by buying them from other people. That is what a real boycott is. It's not, well, I'm not drinking Starbucks because I'm boycotting them. Well, you never drank Starbucks before. Well, that's not the point. Yeah, it is. A boycott has to be something that you are actively purchasing enough that you affect their sales. If you go to Bed Bath & Beyond once every couple of years to buy, 3 or 4 items, even if you spend $100, $200 there, you boycotting Bed Bath & Beyond does nothing. They weren't making money off of you before. They're not going to care about you from a financial standpoint now. Just not going to work. So a boycott has to be, first of all, has to last a fairly long amount of time. Second of all, has to be important to you. It has to be something that actually changes your behavior, forces you to do something you normally wouldn't do, because you have to have an impact on them before the boycott starts. And third, it has to be it can't just be a single item. It can't just be a single aspect of the business, because what happens is when you boycott a single aspect of a business, the rest of the aspects of the business will absorb the cost. That's why businesses diversify. It's because if one aspect of the business starts doing poorly, the rest of the business can absorb the cost and they can still be profitable. Something like, well, I don't like Walmart, so I'm not going to buy produce from Walmart anymore. That's not a boycott, because you're going to buy other things from Walmart. Probably things that have significantly higher profit margins. Groceries are not known for their incredibly high profit margins. So just saying that you're going to boycott produce at Walmart is a waste of time. They will absorb. You will end up spending more money shopping somewhere else, so it's going to hurt you, but it's not going to hurt them at all. You'll buy other things from Walmart, which is where they'll still make their money off of you, and nothing will change. So a real boycott has to be against an entire company or an entire product that cannot somehow absorb the losses somewhere else. So if you want to boycott Walmart, great. You have to boycott the entirety of Walmart and Sam's Club and literally everything the Walmart Corporation has any sort of financial investment in. It has to last for weeks, if not months, and it has to be massive. For companies like Amazon or Walmart or even just like grocery store chains, like we have Century Foods in the Midwest. Or we did. I'm not sure if we still do. Anyway, McDonald's, stuff like that. It can't just be 1,000 people or 10,000 people or even 100,000 people. These companies do tens of millions of transactions every day, all across the country. So getting 10,000 people to boycott them is a drop in the bucket. Does nothing. No, an actual boycott has to be large enough and enough people that it actually affects, again, quarterly and yearly reports. That's the only thing that matters. If it affects a weekly sales report, doesn't matter. If you start buying stuff next week, you just didn't buy anything this week, doesn't matter. Lots of people don't buy things from every single company every week. Even waiting a month to buy something doesn't matter. None of that actually matters. All of these boycotts, boycott Starbucks, boycott Nintendo, boycott Amazon, boycott Chick-fil-A, boycott this, boycott. They're not boycotts. Boycotts are highly organized. You have to have an actual list of demands for them to actually work, because they are technically financial terrorism. I mean, when you really, really look at it, you're basically saying, "Hey, listen, we're going to basically starve you out unless you give in to what we're telling you to do." And like I said, incredibly effective, especially in a capitalism economy. Incredibly effective, but they're not something that just springs up overnight. It takes months of planning. It takes organization. It takes literally thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of people for it to actually do anything. And it has to last for a while. Most companies, when they hear a boycott is happening, just kind of sit back and go. They may even use it to make more money. If people are boycotting them because blah blah, like the Starbucks incident where those gentlemen got arrested, and everyone was talking about boycotts Starbucks and everything. And so what they did is they closed down Starbucks for a day and gave everyone training to make sure that didn't happen again. Guess what? That made them shit tons of money. Yeah, they closed the stores for a day. Again, one day of lost profit doesn't mean jack shit. But the amount of goodwill it got them, because it made them look like they're going, hey, you know, we're doing this because we care about diversity, because we care about stamping out racism, we care about ensuring that Starbucks is a place that everyone feels welcome at. They made shit tons of money off of that. And it's all because they went, hey, we had somebody stupid do something stupid, and now we're going to capitalize on it. And that's not an unethical thing to do. What happened to those gentlemen was monumentally stupid. Having worked years in retail and actually having worked in food service, I can tell you there are a lot of things about that situation that could have warranted getting law enforcement involved. The excuses that the employees and the managers gave were not any of them. And to be perfectly honest, when the law enforcement got there, they probably felt pretty stupid too. Like, as soon as the cops got there and things started happening, the manager should have come out and gone, hey, let me talk to the cops, and just dealt with the situation. No one should have gotten arrested. Nobody should have gotten taken out or anything like that. Like, it was just a monumental fail, especially since calling the cops like that, if they, something a lot of people don't know, if the police get called to your store too often, they start charging you for it. One of the stores I worked at had a infrared sensor that was set up near an air conditioning vent, near enough that every so often the air conditioning would turn on and would blow a like a piece of tape or something like that, and it would cross the movement sensor, not infrared, movement sensor, and it would set off the store alarm. Probably close to, I don't know, once a week, once every other week. And it was especially bad in the winter, because in Wisconsin it snows very, very heavily, and for whatever reason, whenever it would snow, there was a motion detector that somehow would detect motion close to one of the windows. And so if a plow went by or something like that and snow got knocked up either against the window or near the window, it set off the alarms. That store had to deal with the fact that we were being charged by the police for like 3 or 4 calls a year, which starts becoming really, really expensive, especially since that store didn't do all that well financially. So cops being called and things like that, you never want to call the cops unless you absolutely have to, because they're a business, and they'll flat out tell you, hey, listen, if you keep wasting our time, we're just going to make you pay for it. So anyway, enough about that story. Back to boycotts. So what's happening today is a pointless waste of time. All these other boycotts that you read about are pointless wastes of time. They always have been. They always will be, because they're not boycotts. They are people throwing little temper tantrums and trying to get very large companies to do what they want them to do. And that's not how it works, and that's not how it ever has worked, and that's not how it's ever going to work. This is people that don't understand economics in any way, shape, or form, thinking that they're much more powerful than they actually are. They're not. It's stupid. The other thing that upsets me about this is the rampant amount of misinformation and lies going on about this. Now, I'm going to admit that some of these stories I have not had a chance to actually fact check completely. I have had the chance to fact check a few of these things, and from what I've found, it fits something that I've seen happen over and over and over again. So feel free, if you do find more quote-unquote proof of this stuff, feel free to put it in the comments. I may ignore a lot of it because, again, a lot of the proof that I found is from very, very suspect sources. But anyway, so people are touting a couple different things. They're touting that Spanish, over 1,000, I think it's over 1,000 Spanish workers in Amazon warehouses are going on strike for the next 3 days. Striking, very effective method of making change happen. Incredibly effective method of making change happen. But again, striking takes a lot of organization. It takes a lot of work. So that aspect of it, very effective. Go ahead and do that. But the things that I'm seeing, they're basically connecting all these different things that have nothing to do with each other. Like from what I understand, the Spanish workers are striking because they're getting paid poorly. So that's their main focus. They want to get better pay. This is actually a common thing that unions do. They will negotiate for better pay because they have a large group of people that they're negotiating for. They have a better, they have more power in the negotiation, and if they don't get what they want, they strike, which is a huge financial burden to the companies that they're working for, if and only if the company can't absorb the cost. So again, strike works the same way as a boycott. It has to last long enough to actually affect the business, and it has to be large enough to affect the business. You can't have just 5 cashiers in a store go on strike. They can easily just get more cashiers. You have to have the entire staff of a store or of all the stores go on strike. So 1,000 warehouse workers going on strike, from my understanding, is a significant amount of the workforce of the Spanish warehouses. That the strike, I think, is going to be effective in doing something. Now, we watched the voice actors strike go on for over a year. The SAG-AFTRA voice actor strike go on for over a year with nothing happening. So again, even though there was massive amounts of people joining that strike, and SAG-AFTRA is an incredibly strong union, again, we're talking about it took over a year for that to happen. So this strike may have to last for a while, or may not. Again, Amazon is a much different company than the entertainment industry and the voiceover industry. So that I understand, but people seem to be thinking that it's happening in the U.S. And everything I've been able to find so far, and it's been ungodly difficult to find actual reliable sources for any of this, all they do is they list Spanish workers, meaning one of two things. Normally, Spanish refers to people from Spain, a completely different country, which is going through its own issues right now. So if it's just 1,000 Spanish people that are striking, it has nothing to do with Amazon's U.S. anything. More likely than not, the other interpretation I could see is just Spanish-speaking people, which could refer to people in the U.S. But we have labor laws, and OSHA and the Fair Labor Standards Act and things like that. What they're claiming can't actually happen in this country. Like it's not only is it illegal, but for a company that is as large as Amazon, It just couldn't happen. It's so easy to report. It's so easy to get an investigation done for a company that size that it simply couldn't happen. So I think this is talking about people in other countries striking, which again, perfectly fine. If that's the way that they want to deal with their problems, it's an incredibly effective way to negotiate with management. It's why unions were formed. But then there's this other story going around talking about things like workers in Amazon warehouses work 10-hour shifts, aren't allowed pee breaks, they have to pee in bottles, they regularly faint and pass out and have to go to the hospital and things like that. I have found nothing to substantiate anything but the peeing, the pee breaks thing. And the only thing I've been able to find that substantiates it are two articles from the Daily Mail and the Sun. Now, if you don't know what those are two tabloids from the UK. Think about the National Enquirer. Nobody would read the National Enquirer and assume that something that shows up only in the National Enquirer is not covered by the Washington Post, by any other major major newspaper is anything. I mean, the National Enquirer talks about alien abductions and celebrity gossip and things like that. Like, half of what they report is completely false. The same is true about both the Sun and the Daily Mail. If you look up both of them on there's this really great site that I found, so like I'll put the Daily Mail, and then if you push bias, you put bias after that. There's this thing, mediabiasfactcheck.com. I like it. I don't know 100% how accurate it is, but from what I've been able to see from it and my own experience with it, it tends to be fairly reliable. And what it does is you put in something like Fox News or the New York Post or something like that, and you search in there, and it'll tell you if it has a bias, how far the bias is, because they will have in the middle they have least biased, and then they have right center, right extreme, and then left center, left extreme, and they'll also mention factual reporting, which is something that will lean into the bias, because more biased news sources generally will have less factual reporting. The Daily Mail is a right bias, just barely on this side of the extreme right bias, and their factual reporting, according to Media Bias Fact Check, is mixed. And the note that they put on there is the Daily Mail is a British daily middle market tabloid newspaper owned by the Daily Mail and General Trust and published in London, has a strong conservative bias, and has a poor track record with fact checkers. And then they give 7/19/2016, updated 4/21/2017. So that information is basically a year old, which is not bad at all. And the likelihood of them going from regularly reporting false news to being a very, very trusted source is low. The Sun is the same thing, only that's the left version of it. But it's literally the same thing. So the only two points of proof I can get for this Amazon warehouse employees aren't allowed to use the bathroom and have to pee in bottles are tabloid newspapers that are quoted by a bunch of different other ones, but every single other UK publication that has talked about it, which again, none of them are like the BBC or any of their reputable news sources. They're other tabloids. All reference either the Daily Mail or the Sun. So the only source of information is a tabloid that talked to a guy who's writing a book where he went undercover at Amazon to try and show what a horrible company it was. So he is massively biased because he's trying to sell his book. They're both massively biased because they're tabloid newspapers. And we're talking about, again, an entirely different country. I actually don't know labor laws in the UK. I never looked into that. Somebody that actually does understand UK labor laws is more than welcome to come up with a video about and talk about this. However, my understanding is of US labor laws. I know them very, very well for a number of reasons. The biggest of which was being a manager for multiple companies and getting a degree in marketing management. I have had to take business law courses. I have had to have business law training. I have OSHA training. I have I've been trained on the Americans with Disabilities Acts, equal opportunity employment, something, because that's an act. All these different things, like, they're all things that I've been trained on because you have to be as a manager. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, OSHA regulations, the other one, you get tons of training on OSHA regulations. I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, what they're describing cannot happen in this country. OSHA regulations specifically forbid the things that they're talking about. This news article talks about people working on the 4th floor of this warehouse have to go down 4 flights of stairs and walk like a half mile to get to a bathroom. And I might be misremembering the exact distance that they had to walk, but they listed it in actual a portion of a mile instead of feet or something like that, or meters or anything like that. Like they used a big measurement normally reserved for like large land distances. So OSHA regulations require bathroom facilities to be easily accessible. They require separate facilities for men and women. They require that employers are not allowed to impose any sort of restrictions that make it unnecessarily difficult for people to take bathroom breaks or anything that might affect their physical health. Because not peeing for 10 hours actually causes things like UTIs and stuff like that. So in the U.S., it's 100% illegal, and there's no possible way that a company as large as Amazon could have done that. Like, building codes would have to be circumvented for their and fire codes and things like that would have to be circumvented for this to happen. Not to mention, there's about 20 out of the 50 states, 20 of them require breaks. You are legally required to allow people to have breaks at certain times. Once you work a certain amount of time, generally it's 4 hours. Once you work 4 hours, in 20 states you are legally required to have that, and in most other states they have required breaks for minors, and then once you become an adult, they're no longer required to give you breaks. However, something that a lot of people don't realize is any company that works in multiple states, in general, they're not really allowed to have different rule books for different states. So you have to have the least common denominator. It's something that I dealt with for one of the companies I worked with, because the state that I live in, Wisconsin, doesn't actually have mandatory break periods. However, California does. I believe, at least when I worked there, we were told Illinois actually had really strict break policies and stuff like that. So, despite the fact that Wisconsin didn't have one, because it was a nationwide company, we had a break policy in the employee handbook, because the employee handbook had to be uniform across the company, and because they worked in states with very strict labor laws, even though we were in a much looser legal position, we were still required to follow those laws. And that's how it is with just about every country that works, or every company that works across state lines in the U.S. Generally, they will incorporate themselves, so they will put their main headquarters a lot of times in Colorado or Utah, because their business laws and stuff like that means they have less taxes to deal with and stuff like that. But they're required to follow the laws in all these other states, including labor laws. So having people work 10-hour shifts and not allowing them bathroom breaks is illegal in this country. Not only is it illegal from an OSHA standpoint, which the absolute best way to close a business is to piss off OSHA. OSHA can close business. If you don't know what that is, OSHA is, what is it? I've completely forgot. Oh, there we go. Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They're the people that make sure that your workplace isn't a giant shithole, and it's not dangerous to work there. Piss off OSHA, your company's done. OSHA can come in and close your business so fast, levy huge fines. They will close your business. You never want an OSHA complaint against you, ever. That's one of the things you learn in Management 101. Anything that might prompt an OSHA complaint needs to be dealt with immediately. Fix it. So, OSHA wouldn't allow it. It's illegal per OSHA's guidelines. The other thing they talk about there is people regularly having to leave and getting penalized for taking sick days, or they regularly being so sick that they have to seek medical attention because they work so hard that they get exhausted and fall asleep. That also doesn't happen in this country. And I guess I'm being overly simplistic. It does happen. It doesn't happen at large companies. Small companies can technically get away with a lot more, because what happens is every company in this country pays workman's comp insurance. And what happens is, if you have too many people claiming workman's comp, meaning they were forced to seek medical attention. One of the things you can get workman's comp for is simply being forced to seek medical attention from an injury sustained while on the job. They don't have to take any time off of work, but you're actually required to pay. The company is actually required to pay the medical bills. And the money that they use to pay for that comes from their workman's comp insurance. If that's getting used too often, your insurance rates go up. They get astronomically high. And if workman's comp claims are being filed too often against your company, that gets OSHA involved, because then it becomes a workplace hazard issue. I've seen this happen. And then you have to basically justify that, no, everything that they're doing is not, you have to prove that everything that caused these people to get hurt and go get medical attention had nothing to do with the company and everything to do with them being stupid idiots. And the more people you have doing that, the less you're able to prove that it was just them being stupid idiots. Yeah, people regularly passing out, and having getting carted out on ambulances and stuff like that, again, can't happen in this country. I've seen no evidence that any of that is true. I've not seen a single article that is able to prove anything other than anecdotal, quote, eyewitness testimony and stuff like that, which is incredibly unreliable. It's not happening. And the other thing, they're claiming that if they take sick days and things like that, that they're being threatened with being fired. Again, that's illegal in this country. We have a thing called the Family Medical Leave Act, FMLA. It's a thing that basically says you're not allowed to fire your employees or penalize them for taking time off for their own health or the health of their family. There are some gray areas, things like in order for FMLA to actually apply, you have to have been working with the company for 6 months minimum. And there's other things like that. But the basis of it is if anyone ever retaliates against you for taking time off per FMLA, unless you're taking exorbitant amounts of time off, or you're doing things like you're taking time off without calling in sick, it's illegal for them to do anything to you. It is a violation of federal law and will get the business shut down. FMLA violations are very, very serious. Like I said, it's a federal law. It results in fines. It results in businesses closing. The way that those things work, however, is kind of on a strike system. The same thing is true about labor laws and about pay. If you're not being paid correctly or if they're refusing to pay overtime, stuff like that. If it's a big enough issue and you get a lawyer and something like that, a single report can be enough to get a Department of Workforce Development, the DWD, to investigate them. And then again, since it's a government entity, they can do all sorts of horrible things. However, if it's just a single incident, they write it down. They'll tell you, hey, tell them this, tell them this, tell them this. I've gone through this process before, so I know. And they tell you, hey, this is what the law says. If they're still breaking the law, call us back, and you may have to get a lawyer. So a single incident isn't enough to do anything. Once you hit 3, that prompts an automatic investigation by the DWD, which will bring in OSHA, which will bring in a bunch of other groups in to basically audit your business and see what's going on. And if they find enough, the business is over. So again, the reason that small businesses might be getting away with working people for 10-hour shifts and threatening to fire them if they take a sick day and things like that, is simply because there's not enough employees that know to file complaints for them to get enough complaints filed within a short enough time, because the complaints eventually go away after like somewhere between like 3 and 9 months. I can't actually remember. Yeah, that's why smaller companies can sometimes get away with it, because the employees may not know their rights, and there's not enough employees there that they would get enough for a full investigation to be warranted. Large corporations like Amazon, doesn't happen. They have hundreds of thousands of employees. It takes 3 reports to get an investigation. 3. There's no possible way they have that many people that work in their company that don't know their rights. Am I saying Amazon is a bastion of workers' rights or anything? Absolutely not. They're a major corporation. They're something I learned, and it's the reason I hate retail, is the basic rule of thumb is it's only illegal if you get caught. So a lot of companies will push the envelope as far as what's legal and what's not, and they'll only stop pushing when they finally hit the part where they get a single lawsuit or they get something, and then they go, okay, that's the actual line that we're not going to cross. So do I think that, this is a wonderful company that does nothing wrong? Absolutely not. Do I believe that this tabloid news report from a dude trying to sell his book, whose only source is a dude trying to sell his book, who is sometimes actually listed by his name and other times listed as anonymous because anonymous makes him sound more official? No, I don't believe any of this stuff's happening. I don't believe it's happening in the UK, and I certainly know it's not happening in this country. Do I believe Spanish people are mad about low wages? Of course. Do I believe that they're striking? They probably have a good reason to strike? Of course. However, does that mean that I think we need to boycott Amazon? Hell no. This is all hearsay and bullshit. And again, what is being asked of us is not a boycott. It's just a statement. It's less effective than a petition. It's a waste of everybody's time, is what it is. I need to drink something. My straw changes color. It's sad how much that amuses me. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about what a boycott actually is. This whole Amazon debacle and how it's based on, more likely than not, misinformation, outright lies, and maybe one isolated incident that is being blown out of proportion. So anyway, I know this will probably piss off a lot of people because rallying against, the 1% and corporations are all evil, disgusting. Yeah, I don't believe that either. So if this gets people mad, I'm sorry, but this is the real world. Big companies sometimes do bad things. I'm not going to tell you they don't. For the most part, though, they stopped doing that 20 or 30 years ago. Or they stopped doing it regularly 20 to 30 years ago. Maybe even as far back as 50 or 60 years ago. When unions were really in their prime, most companies stopped. And when labor laws started coming in, like in the 60s and 70s, and then the Americans with Disabilities Act in the 90s, really put a stop to most of the abuses that large companies could exert over their employees. Nowadays, they really can't. To be perfectly honest, the people most at risk for being abused are generally entry level and mid-level managers, because a lot of the protections that regular employees have, managers don't. Because they're in a position of authority, and so they no longer have the protection against sexual harassment and things like that that lower employees have. I know this for a fact because I've been investigated for racial discrimination. I've been investigated for sexual harassment. And I was one of the most, not really uptight, but I was one of the most conservative, not in like a political sense, but conservative in like what I would say. I was always very careful to ensure I used proper pronouns, address people by the titles that they preferred. Not even just like pronouns. I mean, if they preferred Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. or Miss, instead of me calling them by their first name, that's what I did. I didn't make jokes. I didn't make comments or anything like that. I would tell people, when they were doing things like, that's what she said, I would be the person who's like, hey, no, we don't make jokes like that. I never, you know, I never sat someone down or anything like that, to yell at them for it or punished anyone for making jokes like that. But I was the guy that was always sitting there going, hey, let's be professional here and things like that. And I was investigated for both racial discrimination and sexual harassment of an employee because I was a manager. Both of them were dropped with nothing. I was never punished. I was never reprimanded. I was barely talked to about both incidents because they were completely and utterly fabricated. Because I was a manager, it happened. I had full investigations that are still part of my file if my file exists with that company anymore. And I know for a fact because I heard it. Employees saying far worse things and doing far worse things than anything I did, and they were completely absolved of it because they were employees and not manager, and there wasn't a power imbalance there. So yeah, this idea that big corporations like Amazon are somehow treating their employees like absolute crap. They're not. Are they treating their employees super well? To be perfectly honest, Amazon has a really good I guess review. I don't know what the word is. People that work for Amazon are generally pretty happy that they work for Amazon. Like even in the warehouses and fulfillment centers and stuff like that. I have quite a few friends that work for Amazon. I've read quite a few reviews. I was interviewed by them. They're a great company to work for from everything that I've seen up until today, obviously. Like I said, that doesn't mean that they don't commit any, that they're a perfect company or anything like that. No company is. And there's always going to be managers that are going to do illegal things and think that they can get away with it. But as soon as it gets above that manager's head, the manager is fired. They generally lose everything. And they get some other moron into their position. Yeah, like, for all intents and purposes, if I had to choose between Amazon and Walmart as far as who treats their employees better, I would probably say the vast majority of Amazon employees are treated far better than people that work at Walmart or McDonald's or quite a few other massive U.S.-based companies. Amazon tends to treat their people pretty good. From a consumer standpoint, they tend to have a pretty good track record. Are they perfect? Again, no. They make stupid decisions. They do things that are motivated entirely by greed and nothing else. But overall, they tend to be a relatively ethical company. So yeah, listening to this smear campaign and this boycott that isn't going to do anything just pisses me off. Anyway, that's all for me today. I will see you guys next time. All right, and my next video when I can handle making it will not be me ranting about something. I promise I will get some more probably D&D content out. But yeah, anyway, that's all for me. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.